Every defeat is painful for the players and leaves their fans in a bad mood. Conversely, the team that wins makes it a happy week for them and their fans. Today, I'm going to tell you about 10 crushing defeats in big derbies that left scars on fans' hearts for years to come, and some players' careers. So sit back and let's get on with it. Let's start with perhaps the most intriguing clash on the planet, Real Barcelona, or as it used to be called, El Clasico. Of course, we will not be able to show all the defeats these teams have suffered in history, but in the new history, or rather in the 21st century, there are a few. On 2nd May 2009, at the very beginning of the Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi era, there was an astonishing defeat at the Santiago Bernabeu, because it was not the home team that won. By a score of 6-2, the Catalans won. That night, Barcelona not only took 3 points from Madrid, but also the expectation of a new confrontation. In that match, Higuaín and Ramos scored for Real, while Henry and Messi scored twice, and Puyol and Piqué added a goal each for the Blaugrana Tovi. Real were waiting for revenge, preparing for it, and it was important to do it at the Camp Nou, and after some time, they had that opportunity. On 29 November 2010, between Barcelona and Real Madrid, the score was 5-0, but here's the problem. The scoreline was again in favor of Barca. Then there was Guardiola's Barcelona, which was rumored to be the machine of the time. In 2015, Barcelona humiliated Real Madrid again, beating the hosts 4-0, and in 2018, Barca did it again, beating the Plums 5-1 at the Camp Nou. As a result, Real have never managed to secure a major victory over Barcelona in recent history. However, Real have won the Champions League and La Liga without such victories. The Milan Derby is considered the most important derby in Italy. The fact that the two teams have shared the same stadium for so long has only added fuel to the fire. The first and biggest victory of the 21st century came on 13th of May 2001. In that match, the Red and Whites crushed their opponents 6-0. Shevchenko scored 2 goals, Comandini 2, and Serginho and Giunti 1 each. The Snake fans had to wait 8 years for the return leg, with Internazionale beating Milan 4-0 in 2009. Jose Mourinho's Inter were in fine form, with Maicon, Milito, Thiago Motta, and Stankovic all scoring. And there was only one other big win between these teams, something the teams from 2009 to 2023 failed to do. And it was only last year, in Milan's championship year, that Inter won. They beat their opponents 5-1. There have only been 3 big wins in the Milan Derby in the 21st century, and given how rarely the teams score, the next defeat won't be long in coming. And which is your most memorable match with a thumping score? Write in the comments. Mine is the 8-2 thrashing of Arsenal by Red Manchester. Write your match. Curious to see. Let's go to England, the home of football. There are several derbies going on at the same time, and all of them are interesting. Let's start with the Manchester Derby. Manchester City versus Manchester United. In this century, the games between these teams have become more fundamental than ever. Manchester used to be dominated by Red Manchester alone, but when the Sheikhs took over Manchester City, poured money into the club, and started winning titles, the results at United started to change too. But there's only been one time when the scoreline has been crushing. On 23 October 2005, according to Fuetam Falfrenicorishay, on Jedorifertor Kavo Lover Mainira, according to 11 at Old Trafford, Man City came to Old Trafford in full readiness. At that time in the 9th round, the team could not have imagined that the champion of the season would be decided in the last round, either United or City, and in the end, the championship in the 93rd minute of the match against Queen's Park Rangers, the white-blue will bring Sergio Aguero. But long before the championship, City put up a very good fight at Trafford. That evening ended sadly for United. They lost 6-1. Mario Balotelli, Edin Dzeko, David Silva, and Sergio Aguero all scored for City, while only Fletcher could find the net for the Red Devils. There has been one other big result between these teams, with City winning 6-3 at home. So let's move on to the other main rivalry, the Liverpool Derby, Everton versus Liverpool. It's no secret that Liverpool have been the favorites in this confrontation for decades, with only 2 big wins recorded between the clubs in the 21st century, and both of them on the Reds account, and both at Anfield. In 2014, Gerrard, Sturridge, and Suarez had some fun, and the scoreline could have been more than 5-0, but Sturridge missed a spot kick in the 56th minute, and the same score was recorded in 2016 in the 29th round. Everton in that match, even in great form, Lukaku could not help. Another clash in England, and again, in London. Arsenal versus Chelsea. It's very interesting to watch these clubs in their rivalry. In the early noughties, the Gunners were on top, Arsene Wenger's side were led by stars like Henry, Campbell, Cole, Bergkamp. In 2004, Arsenal became English champions without losing a single game that season. Chelsea weren't doing so well at the time, but a little later, with the arrival of Roman Abramovich, everything changed for the better. The Blues won the APL, the Champions League, and the Europa League, and Arsenal have not won anything since, apart from the English Cup. And 2 years ago, Arsenal coach Mikel Arteta arrived at the helm of the Gunners, and Roman Abramovich, in connection with sanctions, sold and left the club, and the Blues began a black streak. But the great victories of these teams, over the past 25 years, not many, not a few, just one. Interestingly, Chelsea beat Arsenal 6-0 at Stamford Bridge in 2014, and Arsenal had Mikel Arteta on the pitch. And last week, Mikel returned the favor by beating the Blues 5-0 at home. Now we know that Arteta is a very vengeful man. Another intriguing clash from England, Liverpool versus Manchester United. The confrontation between these two clubs began long before football. Both cities have always been considered industrial cities. Manchester has always been famous for its manufacturing capacity, and Liverpool was a port city. So when the two cities created the Manchester United and Liverpool clubs, the whole of England began to follow the confrontation. If you take the last 2 decades in the confrontation of these clubs, there were not a few big victories, and the first of them dated 5 April 2003. At Old Trafford, Manchester, nothing prevented to defeat Liverpool with a score of 4-0. And one of the goals scored was still a footballer, Ole Solskjaer. That season, by the way, and one MJ and Liverpool became only the 5th. For 18 years, Liverpool fans were waiting for when their club would defeat United, and that very moment came on 24 October 2021. And again at Old Trafford, this time Solskjaer, as head coach of MJ, suffers at that time the biggest home defeat of Liverpool, 0-5. And just 6 months later, Liverpool crushed the Red Devils 4-0 at home. In 2023, Klopp went for the sweet spot and gave United a 7-0 thrashing at Anfield. Arsenal, Manchester United. United's relationship with Arsenal has been much better than that with Liverpool. In the last 2 decades, there have been 2 big wins in the confrontation between these two teams, and both were on the account of Manchester. In the early noughties, United were a threat to everyone in England. Dwight Yorke, Solskjaer, Veron, Van Nistelrooy. On 25 February 2001, the Londoners, with Thierry Henry in the lineup, could do nothing at Old Trafford and lost 6-1. And just 7 years later, Arsenal repeated the feat, losing 8-2. On that night, Wayne Rooney scored a hat-trick, and Arsenal's Andrei Arshavin only received a yellow card. Let's move on to the craziest derby of all, judging by the fans' behavior. The Turkish derby, Galatasaray-Fenerbahce. This derby is known as the Intercontinental Derby, the fact that one takes place in the European part of Istanbul and the other in the Asian part. Derbies in Turkey are always full of emotion, passion, noise, and hatred. In 2002, the biggest victory between these two teams still stands. In the 6th round of the Turkish Championship, Fenerbahce won 6-0. Not that they won, but they gave their opponents no chance. And a little later, in 2006, Fenerbahce scored again, this time 4-0. Galatasaray fans are waiting for their club to do the same. Once upon a time, the confrontation between these two teams was not only memorable, it was also recorded and entered into the Guinness Book of Records. The Fenerbahce versus Galatasaray match broke the world record for noise support at a sporting event, officially registering 131.76 decibels, the volume at which the fans supported their teams. To give you an idea of how loud this is, 130 decibels is the volume of an aeroplane taking off. For the human ear, 130 decibels is the limit. Anything more than that, and you can go deaf. So friends, if you are going to Turkey, make sure you go to the football match with earplugs, just in case. Another derby that can easily compete with the Turks in terms of noise is the Serbian derby, Red Star via Partizan. If you have ever heard the phrase football hell, then you are talking about the Belgrade derby. Any match between these irreconcilable foes is more than just football. It's fights, brawls, fireworks. And if you go to a match between Red Star and Partizan, be prepared to stay for 3 hours instead of the usual 2. This is because, in most cases, matches are either interrupted or postponed. Unfortunately for us, and probably fortunately for Serbian fans, there has not been a single defeat between the rivals since 2008, not even by 3 or more goals. The teams are almost always evenly matched. So the only thing we can expect from this pair is a defeat. And finally, the final clash of today's edition is, of course, the Bundesliga. Bayern v Borussia D. The clash between Bayern and Borussia is not a historic one. The two clubs only began to compete in the 1990s, when they rose to the top of the Bundesliga. They are currently the two most successful clubs in Germany. And of course, there is a big goal difference in their history. The first such match was played on 13th April 2008, when Munich easily stripped their field Dortmund 5-0. Then for Bayern scored Podolski, Zé Roberto, Otto, and 2 goals on the account of Luca Toni. Unfortunately, this was only the beginning of Bayern's downfall. As in the Bundesliga, the Bavarians outclassed Dortmund in this part of the competition. The Bavarians have beaten the Bumblebees 6 times, and only once have they been beaten themselves, if a 5-2 defeat is anything to go by. In 2009, Bayern won 5-1 away from home. But what can you say when the likes of Ribéry, Müller, Mario Gomez, and Bastian Schweinsteiger all scored for the Bavarians? It was only in 2012, in the German Cup final, that they were able to break down the German machine and lift the trophy. Lewandowski scored 3 goals. The only other big wins for Munich were 5-1, 6-0, 5-0, 4-0, and 4-0. This is the end of our issue. Today, we have not told about all the confrontations of the European season, and therefore, we suggest you in the comments remember and write the defeat score of the match, not irreconcilable rivals.